My own grandson sold our entire herd in the dead of night and fled the country with his girlfriend. You won't believe what I did next. I never imagined the light of dawn breaking over my ranch would reveal an empty pasture instead of the familiar silhouettes of grazing cattle. The sun rose in fiery hues, but all I saw was barren ground, no gentle lowing, no dusty hoof prints, only the echo of betrayal that ripped through my chest like a bullet. My grandson, the boy I taught to rope calves and read the weather in the clouds, had sold every single head of cattle that had sustained our family for generations. He didn't just strip me of livestock, he stripped me of purpose, severing the bond between a grandfather and the legacy he poured his life into building. I'm Earl Thompson, a fourth-generation rancher, and these rolling fields under the big Texas sky have borne my sweat, my tears, and my family's pride for more than a century. Each steer and heifer was more than livestock. They were living testaments to resiliency, to the hard work my great-grandfather began and passed down through the years. When I drove out at first light, I expected the familiar sight of cattle moving in unison, their breath misting in the cool air. Instead, I found wide-open gates swinging in the breeze and naught but footprints fading toward the county line. It was a silence so complete that I could hear the pounding of my heart against my ribs. The realization hit me like a stampede. My grandson Jake had orchestrated the sale in secret, and by daybreak, he was on a plane bound for another country with his girlfriend. Every memory of him as a kid laughing in the hayloft, his small hands learning to pat a calf, crashed against the hard truth of his betrayal. They say blood is thicker than water, but that morning I felt the cold sting of blood turned ice. How could I teach him to respect these lands, to value the cattle as family, only to have him turned our heritage into cash, vanishing across borders while I was left clutching empty reins? If you've ever had the ground ripped out from under your feet, you know the hollow ache it leaves behind. Comment below with the word lost if you've faced a betrayal that shattered your sense of home. And together, we'll stand as witnesses to the power of resilience in the face of despair. But this isn't just a tale of heartbreak. It's the story of a battle far from the cattle pens, a moral showdown where trust, legacy, and family honor hang in the balance. Against the desert heat and bureaucratic obstacles, I vowed to hunt them down and reclaim not only our herd, but the respect that binds us. The stakes went beyond stolen livestock. This was about preserving a way of life under constant threat from changing markets, relentless droughts, and now, the utter collapse of faith in my own flesh and blood. I faced a choice: accept defeat and watch my ancestry vanish, or rise up and prove that no betrayal is strong enough to break a rancher's will. So I threw on my Stetson, climbed into my truck, and set the engine roaring like a war horse ready for battle. Every mile I drove away from home carried me closer to a reckoning end. I intended to deliver it with the same steadfast determination that got my cattle through the leanest of seasons. In the next few minutes, I'll take you from that heart-stopping discovery to the edge of two nations, following every dusty highway, every late-night phone call, and every piece of paper that led me to face my grandson and demand justice. I'll show you how a grandfather's love can burn hotter than anger, forging a path of redemption instead of revenge, and how the true value of a legacy isn't measured in acres or head counts, but in the principles we refuse to compromise. If you believe that family and integrity are worth fighting for, hit that like button now, because this story is for anyone who's ever had to stand alone against the odds and defend what they hold sacred. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Each Verdages do Vovô episode we dive into real-life tales of honor tested and restored, proving that age doesn't diminish courage, it refines it. Now, lean in and join me as we rewind to the calm before this storm. when every hoof print was safe beneath the morning sun, and betrayal was still a distant whisper on the wind. Let's go back to where it all began. I grew up chasing calves across these very pastures, the sun baking my neck as I learned to judge weather by the clouds and red cattle by their gates. My great-grandfather Samuel settled this land in 1895, carving a ranch out of scrub grass and mesquite trees, and every generation since has added its sweat and prayers to this soil. The ranch spans over 500 acres of gently rolling terrain, divided by wooden fences that creak with age and dotted with red barns whose roofs bear the scars of countless storms. A creek winds its way through the heart of the property, the water sparkling in midday heat, sustaining the herd just as it sustained my ancestors. Each hoofbeat on this land carries a story. There's Buster, the old Brahmin bull my father raised from a Catholic, says he once charged a mountain lion to protect the herd, and Bella, the gentle Jersey cow that gave us milk through one of the worst droughts in living memory. My wife, Martha, and I married under the old oak tree by the pond, a ceremony attended by neighbors who'd known our families for decades. Together we built this farmhouse with our own hands, raising our son David to love this land as fiercely as we did. The walls still bear framed portraits. David's first branding at 16, my father standing proud in his cowboy hat, and Jake's chubby toddler cheeks covered in hay dust. When David passed away in a tractor accident 10 years ago, it was a blow that nearly broke us, but Jake, just 12 then, stepped up, taking on morning chores to help his grandmother and me. I watched him learn to mend fences, drive tractors, and treat every animal as if it bore the spirit of a family member. By the time Jake became a teenager, he had his own patched hat and a pair of well-worn chaps. He'd herd calves like a pro and build pens that withstood ferocious storms. I took pride in teaching him the difference between farm hands who worked for pay and ranchers who bled for their land. But over the past year, drought conditions turned our green fields into brittle gold. Feed prices skyrocketed, and the bank's interest payments came due with a thud on my desk each month. I sold a portion of our cattle off to neighbors and tightened my belt, confident that family would stick together in lean times. 3 months ago, Jake and his girlfriend Maria moved back into our guest quarters. They said they were between jobs in the city and wanted to help with the ranch to earn their keep. At first, it felt like a blessing to have their young energy and hope within these worn walls. Yet, behind the smiles, I noticed Jake growing silent at dinner, eyes glued to his phone, a hard line forming between his eyebrows. Maria would follow him into the barn, whispering in low tones. Their laughter outside at night sounded strained, and I chalked it up to youthful worry. On a humid evening, I found Maria by the pond, her shoulders shaking. She wiped tears when she saw me. "It's nothing, Mr. Thompson," she said, but I sensed fear mingled with guilt, "just tired." I didn't press respecting her privacy, but logging the moment in my mind. The morning routine changed to Jake would head out before sunrise and return after dark, claiming he was checking fences or moving equipment. I asked him once about it. He mumbled something about scouting drought relief programs. I accepted it, trusting his word as I once trusted my own. Inside the farmhouse, the air felt heavier. The smell of fresh coffee and biscuits was still comforting, but the walls that once echoed with Jake's laughter felt subdued. Martha and I exchanged concerned glances, her knitting paused in her lap, my newspaper unturned on the kitchen table. Every photograph on the mantel seemed to watch me. My father's stern gaze, David's grin frozen in time, Jake standing beside me with a calf. I'd spent a lifetime preserving these memories, believing they would guide us through hardship. Yet a shadow had crept into our home unnoticed until it was too late. In the week before Dawn's betrayal, I lay awake in the bedroom listening to the creak of the old house settling. I wondered if it was the walls groaning or our trust cracking. I vowed to protect this legacy with every breath, unaware that the real threat lived under our own roof. And so, before the sun's first light, as I stepped into my boots and grabbed my hat, I believed I was simply beginning another day on the ranch. Little did I know, I was on the brink of discovering that blood ties could be severed as easily as fence wires, and that the greatest danger sometimes comes from those we love most. At 4:30 a.m., long before sunrise, I slipped into my worn leather boots and snagged my battered Stetson from the rack. The air was cool and heavy with dew as I stepped onto the porch, the faint chirp of crickets the only sound breaking the pre-dawn hush. I guided my steps by the dim glow of a lantern, the beam cutting through shadows until it settled on the pasture gate. I expected the familiar scent of damp grass and the soft lowing of cattle, but instead, a hollow quiet met me, as though the land itself was holding its breath. Pushing open the old wooden gate, I froze. The pasture lay empty. No cows, no calves, nothing but open space where the herd should have clustered near the trough. My heart skipped a beat, then hammered. My lantern's light shook in my hand. I flicked the lantern's switch harder, illuminating a shattered lock on the corral's gate. The latch hung twisted from a broken hinge, fresh wood splinters at its base. Someone had deliberately forced it open in the night, someone who knew how to move cattle quietly and efficiently. My mind raced back to Jake's recent absences, those late-night rim checks, the whispered conversations with Maria. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and dialed his number. It rang once, twice, and then clicked to voicemail. "Hey Grandpa, can't talk now." The message cut off. I cursed under my breath, crushing the phone in my palm before redialing his cell. No answer. A wave of dread washed over me. He was gone from our home, and so was everything we built together. I turned toward the fence line and saw deep tire tracks leading down the dirt road. They headed west, toward the county line and beyond. My lantern's light caught tiny hoof prints in the mud, pointing in the same direction, every clue a dagger to my pride. I sprinted back to the barn, heart pounding, and flipped on the overhead light. The livestock ledger, the thick leather-bound book listing every animal, every birth and vaccination lay open on the work table, but the pages detailing the herd count were ripped out and torn. My hands shook as I scooped up the torn pages, the ink bleeding into my palm. This was no accident. Someone orchestrated a deliberate heist, then covered their tracks, as if they never intended to leave a trace of remorse. I found Martha in the kitchen, her eyes puffy from sleep. "They're gone, Martha," I said, voice low but urgent. Her face crumpled. "All of them," she whispered. I nodded, unable to form words. The weight of that moment lay heavy between us. Martha wrapped a blanket around my shoulders as I paced the floor. "We need to call the sheriff," she urged, but I knew that by the time law enforcement got involved, the trail would have gone cold. "I can't wait," I said. "I have to find them now." I grabbed my coat, my Stetson, and the torn ledger pages, stuffing them into my jacket pocket. Then I headed outside, determination grounding my panic. The night air stung my lungs as I followed the tracks toward justice. At the edge of the driveway, I paused to raise my gaze to the sky, where the first hint of dawn painted the horizon in bruised purples and dull oranges. In that moment, the betrayal cut deeper than any drought or market crash ever could. With that sunrise promise at my back, I climbed into my old pickup and roared down the road. Every mile marker I passed tightened a resolve in my chest. This was no longer just about a ranch or a herd. It was about family honor and the legacy my ancestors entrusted to me. and as I disappeared into the early morning mist, I swore to myself I would cross every border, navigate every bureaucratic maze, and face every obstacle to bring that hurt and my faith in my own blood back home. With the torn ledger pages burning in my jacket pocket, I steered my pickup toward the only place they could have gone first, the county livestock auction barn, 40 miles west. As dawn broke, the sky bled pink and gold across the horizon, each mile marker a reminder that time was the thief stealing my chances of catching them. Arriving at the auction, I found a smattering of ranchers sipping coffee outside the weathered wood building. The unmistakable clatter of metal gates echoed inside. I walked through the swinging doors, my boots thudding on the concrete floor, and spotted barrels of pins empty, now but still marked with yesterday's chalk numbers. A clerk behind the counter looked up. "You're Earl Thompson, aren't you?" he asked, eyes flicking to my battered hat. I nodded, my throat tight. "Your herd was here yesterday." A fellow in a dark jacket bought all 60 head paid in cash. He slid a photocopy of the bill of sale toward me, the signature scrawled J. Thompson. My pulse thundered at the sight. Jacob Thompson, my grandson. My hand trembled as I picked up the paper. The clerk added quietly, said he was clearing debts. I forced a polite nod and left him behind, the wind carrying the faint smell of hay and leftover feed. Out in the parking lot, I called my attorney, Mr. Morales, who had handled our estate affairs for years. His calm voice on the other end urged patience. Collect all documentation will show fraud. But know this, Earl, once the auction's done, proving ownership becomes a paper war. You need every shred of evidence. With Morales's counsel in mind, I drove to the county extension office to pull digital brand records. The clerk there ran my brand registration, 27 to 4M, against recent transfers. My stomach sank when I saw the system flagged all 60 calves marked 27 to 4M, transferred to a feedlot 70 miles south, just past the state line. I traced the transfer to Rio Grande feedlot in a neighboring state. My map lay sprawled across the passenger seat as I charted my course. East on Highway 82, crossed the state line at Eagle Pass, then south through unpaved roads into Scrubland. Each turn tightened the knot in my gut. Before leaving town, I stopped at Hank's place, my old neighbor who knew every whisper of ranch gossip. Over strong black coffee, we pored over satellite images on my tablet, zooming in on large pens and trucks, coming and going. His insight into local haulers pointed me to a transport company known for quick, quiet runs. Armed with that lead, I called the transport company's dispatch. After a firm introduction and mention of legal inquiries, they confirmed a cattle truck had passed through at dawn, destination RGF, on a permit issued to J. Thompson. No hesitation, no regret. That afternoon, I met with my ranch foreman, Luis, who had faithfully worked these fields for 15 years. We reviewed photographs of the cattle taken just weeks earlier, each distinctive ear tag and brand vividly visible. Luis's jaw clenched. His loyalty mirrored mine. "We'll get them back, boss," he said, resolve coloring his voice. Night fell, and I found myself back at home, pacing the kitchen floor as Martha watched, sympathetic but anxious. I spread ledger pages, sale receipts, and brand records across the island counter like battle plans. "We go tonight," I told her. She nodded, her silent strength fueling my conviction. At midnight, Luis and I loaded essential gear, binoculars, cameras, night vision goggles, and set out in the pickup, the headlights slicing through thick darkness. The road was long and lonely, punctuated by rattling gravel and the occasional howl of a distant coyote. Crossing into the neighboring state, border patrol lights gleamed on far-off hills. I dialed Mr. Morales again to alert him of our presence near the legal jurisdiction line. He cautioned, "Caution. Document everything, Earl. Any misstep and you risk losing your claim forever." As we neared the Rio Grande feedlot, the compound silhouette emerged under a half-moon sky, chain-link fences topped with barbed wire and rows of pins stretching into the gloom. My heart raced. The herd's soft lowing drifted through the fence like a wounded song. We parked a safe distance away and snapped photos through the fence, focusing on the brands and ear tags. Every click of the camera was a victory proofs to bring back to Morales. Tangible evidence of my betrayal's victims. I breathed in the ranch air mixed with feed dust, bracing myself for the confrontation that loomed with dawn. As dawn's first light tinged the sky in bruised purples, Luis and I crept to the feedlot's guard shack. My heart hammered like a war drum. I felt each breath in my chest, steadying myself for the moment when I'd face the men who held my heritage behind barbed wire. The guard, bleary-eyed and suspicious, peered at Luce's consulate letter in my attorney's documents. He radioed inside. My throat tightened when he nodded and gripped the shack door's handle, swung it open, and motioned us through with curt professionalism. Inside, the feedlot manager, Don Salazar, awaited us beside a row of steel pins. He wore a crisp button-down despite the dust, arms crossed as if daring me to speak. His presence radiated authority. I braced myself, remembering every ranch hand I'd trained here, now replaced by strangers. "Mr. Thompson," he began in accented English, voice even, "I understand you claim these cattle are yours, but my purchase records are in order." He tapped a clipboard. "Purchased legally from J. Thompson, no coercion, no deceit. We considered this a fair transaction." I met his gaze, calm but unyielding. "You bought stolen property," I replied, sliding the photocopy of the bill of sale across the table, signed by my grandson, Jacob Thompson, who had no authority to sell these cattle. His brow furrowed as he examined the paper. Don Salazar flipped through my documentation, brand registration records, auction receipts, and bank statements showing no payment from our account to Jake. I watched every micro-expression, waiting for the moment truth would break through his professional facade. Behind him, the herd stirred. Their lowing echoes pressed against the corrugated walls. I remembered each calf's birthmark, the day they first took their shaky steps. Here they were, huddled like frightened children, emblematic of my family's livelihood held hostage. Salazar finally cleared his throat. "If this is fraudulent," he said, voice lower, "what do you expect me to do?" His posture softened. "Fractionally businessmen meeting moral crisis. Return them," I asked, simply, nodding, "and I'll cover your costs." He hesitated, glancing down at the pins, then back at me. The silence stretched taut. In that heartbeat, I considered my alternatives: costly litigation or expensive transport. But standing here face to face, I preferred resolve over rancor. At that moment, footsteps clacked on gravel. Jake and Maria appeared at the gate's entrance, drawn by the commotion and consulate arrangements. His shoulders slumped. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. Their names on the wind felt like the last piece of this betrayal puzzle. I turned to Jake, voice soft but firm. "You sold our herd without telling me. You betrayed our trust, our history. Why?" He swallowed, gaze flickering between me and the cattle. "Grandpa," he rasped, I was desperate. I thought we could start over." Maria placed a trembling hand on Jake's arm. "We're sorry," she whispered. "We thought it was the only way." The crack in their defiance revealed regret, but remorse didn't restore stolen years or lost trust. I lifted the bill of sale and brand records for them to see. "This paper proves your deceit. But these cattle?" I gestured toward the herd. are living proof of what you gambled away. Each animal's branded flank told a story of sacrifice and survival, stories they nearly erased. Salazar stepped forward, nodding. Mr. Thompson, I will arrange for immediate release of your cattle. No further fees. Relief washed over me, but even as pens opened and the herd streamed out, my gaze remained fixed on Jake. As the last steer passed through the gate, dust swirling in the morning light, I felt the weight of justice settle in my bones. I had faced betrayal, crossed borders, and stood firm against greed and emerged with my legacy intact, ready to rebuild trust one hoofbeat at a time. As the gates clanged open and the herd streamed out, I felt a rush of relief stronger than any river flood. The cattle, sensing freedom, moved with a familiar rhythm, heads low, tails flicking with recognition. Their hoofbeats echoed across the lot, a triumphant sound that said, "We're home." Don Salazar stepped aside with a nod of respect. "They're yours, Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice carrying a hint of admiration. "I've instructed my staff to return all fees and avoid further disputes." He pressed my hand, an unexpected show of solidarity in a world too often ruled by profit. Jake stood at my side, his chin quivering. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry," he whispered, voice thick with remorse. I placed a firm hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension seep from his posture. "It's time to make things right," I told him, and together we guided our herd onto the waiting trailer. Back at the ranch, word spread like wildfire. Neighbors gathered along the fence line, waving and offering cheers as the blue pickup and livestock trailer crested the rise. Their smiles were a balm proof that community still held fast to shared values. When one of their own faced injustice, Martha met me at the gate, tears glistening in her eyes. She embraced me with a strength I hadn't realized she'd mustered. "You did it," she said softly. I nodded, gazing at the returning herd with pride. "We did it," I corrected, knowing that love and teamwork had carried us through this trial. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I led Jake and Maria to the barn's hayloft. Dust motes danced in the fading light, and I handed Jake the livestock ledger, now repaired and updated. "You'll manage these records from now on," I said. "Every birth, every sale, every tag." His eyes met mine with newfound determination. Over the next week, the ranch hummed with activity. Jake and Maria worked sunrise to sunset, mending fences that had weathered storms, tending to cattle with renewed reverence, and rebranding any calves born during the crisis. Their eagerness spoke louder than any apology. I filed legal documents to formally void the fraudulent sale and secure compensation for the ordeal's expenses. The process was tedious: court dates, affidavits, and border office visits, but with each signature, I felt the scales of justice balance back toward our family. Local press arrived to capture the homecoming, cameras rolling as we unloaded the last of the herd. A reporter asked me what I'd say to others who might face betrayal. I looked into the lens and said, "Stand firm in your truth and never surrender your legacy." The words felt right, like a heartfelt sermon to my neighbors and viewers at home. Community support didn't end at cheers. Neighbors brought extra feed when the market ran low, offered their tractors when mine broke down, and shared stories of their own family trials. In solidarity, we uncovered a deeper truth: hardship binds communities closer than easy times ever could. One crisp morning, I led a small tour of local school children through the barnyard, showing them the brands and telling them the story of Buster the Brahmin who protected the herd. I emphasized lessons of responsibility, integrity, and resilience, planting seeds that would grow long after my time. Jake and Maria joined me, recounting their version of the story, how fear led them astray. and how they found their way back through accountability. Their honesty, delivered to wide-eyed kids, felt like redemption's true reward, turning wrong into a lesson for the next generation. That weekend, I hosted a community barbecue under the big oak tree, serving brisket and potato salad. We laughed, shared stories, and toasted to second chances. As I raised my glass, I thought of every ancestor whose sweat watered this land and felt their presence in each heartfelt cheers. At day's end, Jake handed me a small sapling, a young oak to plant near the pond. "For our tomorrow," he said. I knelt in the soft earth, placing the roots gently and covering them with soil. As I patted the ground, I whispered, "May this tree stand tall, like our family, deep-rooted and unbreakable." Standing back, I surveyed the ranch, bathed in twilight. The cattle rested in green pastures, the barn lights glowed warmly, and the oak's fragile leaves quivered in a gentle breeze. The crisis was over. Justice served not with vengeance, but with forgiveness, restoration, and a renewed promise that no betrayal, however painful, could uproot the legacy we had sown together. As I stand here under the same sky that watched my ancestors settle this land, I'm reminded that every betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from family, yet every wound also offers a chance to heal stronger bonds, and that's the lesson I carry forward. Protecting our ranch wasn't just about cattle, it was about defending the trust that knits generations together. We fought not only for property, but for the principle that what's sacred, whether a herd, a memory, or a promise, must be guarded with unwavering resolve. If you've ever had to reclaim what was stolen, be it livelihood, legacy, or life, encourage you to stand firm. Let your conviction be the reins that guide you back home. And remember, no obstacle is mightier than a heart committed to justice. I want to hear your stories. Have you faced betrayal in your own family? How did you confront it? And what did you learn? Share your experiences in the comments so we can learn and grow together as a community bound by resilience. If today's tale resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps more people discover these stories of integrity, tested and restored, and ensures that Verdades do Vovô continues bringing real-life lessons to light. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. We have more profound stories of everyday heroes on the horizon, like how I rallied neighbors to rebuild after the worst drought in decades, or the time I led a town through a devastating flood. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, links in the description for behind-the-scenes moments, ranch updates, and exclusive Q&A sessions where we dive deeper into the principles that guide our family and our community. From my ranch to your home, remember, honor, legacy, and family are more than words. They're the pillars that hold up our world. When those pillars tremble, it's our duty to shore them up, stone by stone, with courage and compassion. As you finish watching, look around at what you've built: your home, your relationships, your values. Ask yourself, what's worth fighting for? And how hard are you willing to go to protect it? Thank you for riding along on this journey. Your presence here means the world, and together, we're proving that age doesn't diminish strength, it refines it. In closing, let me leave you with a final thought. Sometimes the fiercest battles aren't fought on open fields, but in the quiet moments when we decide to stand up for what matters most. Until next time, stay resilient, stay honorable, and above all, stay true to your word. This is Grandpa Earl, signing off from the Thompson Ranch.